In this presentation, we will set up a new employee within QuickBooks Pro 2019. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in QuickBooks in the home page. We currently have the Open Windows open, where you can find that at the View tab and the Open Windows list. This is where we will start. We're going to be down here in the Employees section where we're going to be entering new employees. Now remember, we've already set up the payroll. So if you're deciding on which payroll to set up, we discussed that in a prior presentation in terms of the different types of payroll options that QuickBooks has, as well as outside payroll options. So once the payroll is set up, if you have payroll set up within QuickBooks, no matter what type of payroll system it will be, or even if you have the payroll system set up outside of QuickBooks, we may still want to enter the employees into the system. In other words, even if we have the payroll done by another company like a Paychex or an ADP, something outside of the QuickBooks system, we would have to integrate that data into QuickBooks some way, at least with a journal entry, so that we can record the expense into our system. So we could do that with a journal entry, and we may want to track the information related to those employees within the system in any case as well. So we want to label them, name them as an employee, and track them and their information in this database system as one of the ways to track the information. So we're going to enter their data here. If you have payroll through QuickBooks, your payroll will look something like this in the Home tab of the QuickBooks Pro. We'll have the enter time, the pay employees, and the pay liabilities. If we have no payroll set up within QuickBooks, it may look a little different. We may not have the Pay Employees button in particular because we're not paying employees through QuickBooks. We don't have that set up. Now remember, here we set this up with a manual payroll, and if you want to practice payroll, then the manual payroll is really a nice option to use. It looks very much the same. It's just that we're going to add and enter and have to calculate some more of the data to enter into the system. If you want to take a look at how to set that up, then prior presentation will give that information. Note we're going to add payroll now, so we're going to go to the Employee Center. We could do that by going to the Employee Center here from the home page. I like to do it from the drop down up top because you can do that from any location you're at in the QuickBooks system. I'm going to go to the Employees up top and go to Employee Center. Employee Center here. Now we're going to list the employees on the left side. That'll be the employees we will have. We don't have any yet. And so that's what we're going to have. We're going to enter new employees here. So we're just going to add the employees into the system. We're not processing the payroll yet. We're just adding the employees and putting their information into the system. What will we need in order to add the employee? We're going to need stuff that usually we're going to find on the form W4. So if we go to the W4 here, this is just an example of the W4. Sorry to pop around like that very quickly, but this is a W4. I'm getting this from the IRS website, so you could go to irs.gov and search for a W4, and that'll give you an example of the W4 form as well as the instructions to it. Typically when we have a new employee, we have them fill out a W4 form, which will give us the information that will be necessary, and a form that we can basically just use to help us with the data input into the QuickBooks system for new employees. So it's going to include things like the name, first name, last name, social security number on the W form. The address will be on the W4 that we will have. And then it'll also have the number of allowances we're going to have. Now, what are allowances? Just a quick kind of overview of allowances. Remember that when we file the tax return at the end of the year, our individual tax returns, our Form 1040, we have something called exemptions. And the exemptions are things like ourselves, dependents, and spouses. And they help in the calculation of lowering income. So an exemption will basically lower net taxable income, lowering taxes. So we need here to withhold taxes for employees, in part in their federal income taxes. So in order to do that, there's got to be some calculation of the number of exemptions, which are kind of similar, a number of allowances, which are similar to exemptions. Now, they're not going to be the same because there might be different types of income between, a spouse may work or may not work. So the calculation on these, we won't get into all the calculations, but in any case, the allowances are an attempt to help us with the calculation in order to get the withholding correct. We're never going to get the withholding exactly correct because most employees have more complicated payroll or income on their 1040 than we have here. So this is an attempt to basically line up everything so that we get our withholdings correct. The system then will help us with the use of the allowances to withhold an amount that hopefully is correct and close to the actual taxes owed by the employee. So there's directions in terms of how to fill out the W-4, and we can also have some other types of calculations in terms of how much withholding we want to have in order to include the correct withholding amount. So the filling out of the W-4 is kind of a different story, but of course the information we will need is the number of allowances that the system will then use in order to calculate how much to withhold per employee. So that's going to be the basis of what we need. So I'm going to go back to QuickBooks here, and we're just going to go to new employee. We're going to add a new employee, and it's going to look very similar, this screen, to when we added a vendor or a customer. It's got the tabs on the left where we have the personal tab, address, additional information. The new thing, of course, the complex thing, is going to be the payroll information we're going to have to enter. And so we'll need that information. So we're just going to start entering this information through, and we'll start with kind of like the basic information here, and then we'll go through to some of the tax information. So again, we'll get this from the W-4. Typically, I'm going to say the first one is Adam. I'm just tabbing through this using tab when to go to the next field. Hamilton. We're going to say I think that's how it should be spelled. I don't think it's spelled right in my data input sheet here. So, and then it'll print on the check in this format. If we want to reverse that, like Hamilton, comma Adam, we could change that if we wanted to. Social Security number, it's going to make up a Social Security number. It's going to look something like this in form, right? And then it'll add, notice I didn't add the dashes, but then it added the dashes if you select tab, so you don't have to type the dashes, in other words, if you don't want to, it's a little faster. And then we're going to say gender. You could hit the drop down or just type in an M. Here's the drop down. We're going to say date of birth. Again, I'm going to say 0905 79. Again, you could use this item to do it. I'm not putting any dashes when I select tab. It'll just put that information in there. I'm trying to do it a little bit faster that way. Marital status, if you know what it is, you can just put marital status. I typed an S. You could select the drop down to see that. And this would be on the W-4 as well. It's important to note. You might ask, why do I need to know someone's marital status on my system, right? It seems like an information that's not part of work. But we need it because it's going to be helping us to calculate the tax information. So this isn't just personal data that we're having here just so we can, know our employees better, although it might be useful, we probably want to know, but this is here because the status is necessary to calculate the correct tax withholdings. So we're going to say single here. We're going to say citizen. We're going to say yes. Ethnicity, we don't really need the ethnicity. We could put this. This is an information thing. We don't need this in order to calculate the taxes. So I'm going to leave it blank for ourselves. Disability, I'm not gonna put anything in the disability. It's not a required field. We're not going to put anything in the I-9 or military information. So these could be necessary in some circumstances. They're not going to be required fields, but they're not necessary for our circumstances. Next, we're going to have the address. And again, this could be found on the W-4. So if you're looking for one form to have most of the information, you're looking for the W-4. So we're going to just type in address here. I'm just kind of making up an address. I think there's actually a pizza place at this address or something, and so we're going to so here's the address. So this is obviously going to be necessary to have the address to fill out the W-2 forms. We're going to have addresses on there as a requirement. So this is not an optional field. Again, you might think, well, it's none of my business really where someone lives or whatnot, but we have to have the address because we have to have it for the W-2 because the IRS wants to know where someone lives, right? If you owe the IRS money, they want to know where you live, and the IRS thinks it's the employer's responsibility to tell them that. so we're going to have to put that information on there. And then we've got the telephone number. not required field, but we probably would want that just as a database program in terms of our personal data, so that this is one area where we can just have our contact information for the employees. We may have it somewhere else as well, but we would want it in here as well. I'm not going to put it here. It's not required for our tax calculation. So here's the, again, this is just more informational information, like the phone number, the email address. It's not required to make taxes. I'm not going to put it here, but useful to track our employees, mobile, and the fax. Again, a lot of fields that we could use to track information, not required fields. So emergency contact, again, not typically a requirement. It might be required for some human resources type of requirements, but again, not really to process the payroll, which is what we're mainly concerned with in this in here in our practice problem. Now we're going to go to the additional info, additional information. Of course, what that stands for, we don't have any, so we're not going to put any additional information. We're going to go to the payroll info, the payroll information, and this is going to be where the kind of the new stuff is. It's not just kind of data input in terms of name and address and whatnot. In other words, this screen is one that looks a bit different than we've seen for like vendors and customers. So first we have the payroll schedule. So I'm not going to put anything in terms of this payroll schedule. What we are going to use is the pay frequency. And that's how often we pay the employees. Do we pay the employees? There's a couple different standard payroll, right? We can pay them weekly if we select the drop down. We can pay them daily. That's, not too common, but we can pay them weekly. We can pay them bi-weekly or semi-monthly. Those seem like the same things, but they're not exactly the same thing. So just be aware of that. For example, if you pay someone every semi-monthly on the 15th and the 30th or the 31st, the middle and end of the month, every month, then you pay someone 12 months times 2 or 24 times. On the other hand, if you pay someone bi-weekly every 2 weeks, which you would think, since there's 12 months and there's about 4 weeks each month, you would think it'd be the same, but it's not quite, because there's 52 weeks in a year, and if you divide that by 2, then you get 26, because you're paying them every 2 weeks. There's 52 weeks divided. So there's 2 more pay periods. In other words, if you pay people semi-weekly versus if you pay people bi-weekly other than semi-monthly. So just be aware, whatever that your system is using, you want to pick that one, of course. And we've got the monthly, quarterly, not as common, but possible. Annually, probably not how most people are paid. We're going to choose monthly here. So we're going to go monthly. So we're going to process the payroll monthly. Now the items that we have, we're going to have to set up payroll items. We haven't set up any payroll items yet because we didn't have payroll at first, right? So items similar to like an inventory item, we had to set up, and service items. Payroll, we also call basically items that are payroll items. And those are going to be the way we pay people, which is usually kind of like salary or hourly are going to be the types of payroll items we'll have to set up. So we could go to new item here. I like to just type in salary and then select tab, and it's going to say, hey, we don't see salary in our drop down list for items. And that's because we haven't set it up yet. We're going to go through the setup process to set up the salary. So salary, of course, means that we're going to pay Adam. A set amount, not based on an hourly basis, but on a salary basis. So we're going to set it up. And then QuickBooks says, do you want to set the payroll item to track hourly wages, annual salary, commission, or bonuses? Those are basically the options we have. And of course, we want the salary. We want the annual salary. That's what we're looking for the item that's called salary. So we're going to say next. And so do we want regular pay versus overtime sick pay? We need the regular pay. That's what we're looking for. That's what we are setting up here. Next. And enter the name of the salary item. We're going to call it salary. So we'll keep that as the default. Next. We're going to say enter the account for tracking this expense. It defaults to an expense account called payroll expense, which seems reasonable, right? It's an account that's going to set up to track payroll. That when we have payroll, it's going to be payroll expense. And so, okay, that sounds reasonable. We'll keep that there. And finish. So that's going to be it. It's set up the salary as an item now. Now we're going to enter the salary amount here. So we're going to have to enter the yearly salary. We're not going to enter what they get paid a month. So in other words, when we talk about salary, we're talking about an annual salary. So we're going to say it's $55,000 a year. So we're going to say $55,000 a year. How much would they get paid a month when they process the check divided by 12 months? That's going to be $4,583.33 per month. So what we do here is, of course, put the yearly salary here, which we're going to say is $55,000 for the yearly salary. Now it's prompted me to say, hey, do you want to set up the federal, state, and other kind of taxes? We do, but I'm gonna leave this for now, leave as is, and then show you where we would process that. It's because I hit enter, so I'm gonna go back to Adams Hamilton. I'm gonna double click on Adam Hamilton. We're gonna go back in there. I'm gonna go to payroll, go back to where we were. And we could have set those up as it was there, but I want to see where it is here. It's in the taxes tab up here. So now we're going to set up the taxes. So we're going to go up to taxes up top, and we'll set up the taxes. And this is where we put the information related to filing status. This is on the W-4, single, married. We're going to use single. The number of allowances, also on the W-4. We're going to say 1 for the allowances. Extra withholdings, also on the W-4 that could withhold extra for federal income taxes, leave that. Default, Medicare, Social Security, and federal unemployment. That we're gonna leave those items. Those are gonna be the default taxes we have to deal with. So the payroll taxes include federal income tax, Medicare, Social Security, and then the federal unemployment tax, which is an employer tax. So those are all things that we're gonna need. Now in the state tab here, within the state. Now, we set the problem up as a location in New York, but we're going to keep it kind of generic here. The states will change. Obviously, the state taxes will change, meaning some states will have taxes that will need to be withheld and some will not. And so it's going to be varied from state to state. And of course, the more sophisticated kind of payroll services we'll have, the more sophisticated that the system will be able to calculate that for us. The process will be much the same that we'll take a look at here. So I'm not going to set up a state here. We're going to keep it kind of generic, as the whole kind of U.S. Would be the same for federal income taxes. And then we would have to tack onto it whatever the state taxes are, which would typically mirror in some way the federal taxes, meaning they may be more or less, but the format of how they will be withheld will be much the same. Some states won't have the payroll taxes in many ways, and others will have payroll taxes that will mirror the Fed in a similar fashion. So again, that's another area that you're going to want to have support with to set up. The more complicated, if there's multiple states, then you're going to want to get different levels of advice from a CPA or a professional payroll. Okay, so that's what we're going to set up here. The other items, we're going to keep this as is as well. I'm just going to say OK. And it says the state is not selected, and we know that. That's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and continue with the federal items. So we're going to say OK, and there we have it. So there's our first employee. Now we're going to do this one more time. We're going to do it a little bit faster. We're going to go to new employees up top, and we're going to say this employee is Erica. So Erica, just going to tab through this. We're on the personal information. Last name is going to be Robertson, and so it fills this out automatically. I'm tabbing to the Social Security, 545545544. I'm not putting any dashes. Note, I'm just going to select tab, and it should fill that in for us. There it is, puts the dashes in there for us. This is all coming from the W-4 or would as well. So I can say, just type in an F, and it'll put female versus male rather than hitting the drop down. Date of birth, not going to put any dashes. I'm just going to say 12/31/79. Again, if I hit tab, it adds the formatting for us. Marital status, we're going to say married versus single. I'm just going to type an M. It'll pick that information up. Citizen, I'm just going to type a Y. It's going to pick that up. Ethnicity, not a required field, as is the rest of the information, not required. We're going to go to the address and content. Same thing, it's going to come from the W-4. We're going to say it's 4th East 2nd Street. Okay. And we're going to say it's in New York. And we're going to say New York is going to be where we're looking. And the zip code is going to be 10003. So there's going to be that information. Now we're going to go down to the payroll information. So we're going to go down to the payroll information, and we're going to say that once again, monthly is when we pay. So it's going, the default here is bi-weekly. We're going to switch that to monthly. And then we're going to set up this employee, we're going to say is the other type of item. We're going to say hourly. So I'm going to type in hourly. Obviously, if we have the drop down, we only have salary so far. So we're going to type in hourly to add this. We could say new. I like to type it in there and then select tab. And it says, hey, we don't see hourly. Do you want us to set that up? Or it actually says, hourly is not in the payroll item list, which basically means, hey, we don't see that one. Do you want to set it up? We're going to say, yeah, let's set that up. And it's going to be hourly wages. That's what we want. So we're going to say, yeah. Regular pay versus overtime, sick, or vacation. That's what we want. So we're going to say regular pay. Hourly seems like a reasonable name to name it. So we're going to keep that as the default for naming it. And it will go once again to payroll expense when we process this. The expense account, in other words, payroll expense. So that will be okay. So we're going to finish that. And there we have that. So then we're going to have the rate here, which I don't have in my data right now. And that's often the case because when we set this up, we have the W-4 information, which doesn't have the salary. We might not have the salary. We might have everything except the salary. I'm going to keep this where it is for now. We've got the items set up. What we do need to set up, what we do have right now, is the taxes. So I'm going to go up to taxes up top, and we'll fill out the taxes which we would get from the W-4. So we're going to say here, drop down, this one, married. Erica is married, and we're going to say allowances. We're going to say 3 that we got from the W-4. No extra withholdings we would get from the W-4. The defaults, Medicare, Social Security, and federal unemployment tax, we will keep those as the default. Again, we're not going to fill out the state. We're going to keep it kind of generic as the federal taxes and keep it at that. So we're going to say okay, and that's going to be it. Again, if we had, I'm going to continue. If we had the rate, we would have the rate here. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay again, and then continue. And then again, if I had the rate here, we would add the rate. I'm going to keep it blank right now and add that once we get it, once we process the payroll. So I'm going to say okay, and it's going to say, do you wish to set up payroll information for other? I'm going to say no. I'm going to leave it for now. Other taxes will be like ETT taxes, and so we're not going to set up anything. We're going to keep it basically generic, looking at federal income tax, Social Security, and Medicare, the major federal payroll taxes for the U.S. So leave as is, and there we have it. So there's our 2 employees. Now we're just going to print a report for the employee list and just add that to our report lists. And so we're going to go to reports up top. And if we wanted to print a report related to employees, we're going to go down to employees and payroll. And we want to just see basically a list of the employees. So all this information will give a lot of detail once we start processing the payroll. We just basically want a payroll contact list. So we're going to go back to the payroll, down to the payroll contact list. And so here's a list of our employees. So we got the Social Security, the main phone, the address. We'll keep it as is here. Now I'm going to print it a couple different ways. I'm going to export it to Excel so we can have it on that one sheet that's building all these reports that we're putting together as we go. And then we'll also print it as a PDF. Okay, so I'm going to say Excel. I'm going to try to save it to an Excel worksheet that we already have. So this is a useful thing to do. So we're going to say we want to create a new worksheet. However, it's going to be in the same workbook. So I went Excel, new worksheet, existing workbook, however. Browse to find that workbook. I'm going to hit the browse button and find it. It's on my desktop. Get Great Guitars, Reports, Section 6 is what we're working on. And then I'm just going to pick up this one. I'm just going to double click on it. Excel should pick that up. And then when we export, it'll open it and put that report into it, which will be great. So here it is. I increased the size of it a little bit here so we can see it a little bit. So I'm at 130. And so here's our information. The headers are there. If you go to the second tab, you'll say, okay, and you'll be able to see the headers. So that's good. If I go back to the normal view, so there we have this. I'm going to go to the view up top, Windows, and unsplit. So we don't have that split up top. And so again, this is a nice worksheet you can give to somebody with one file rather than all these files. These are the tabs we've done so far. I'm going to drag it to the end. because it's the last report we've done. I'm going to call it employees. I double clicked on it to double click on it, employees. And then I'm going to click off of it. And so this is the reports we have so far. We have it nice in one little form here. So I could give someone this document. I could delete this one again. It creates this every time to tell us some tips and whatnot. So I'm going to right click and delete. And so there's our information. Now we could obviously give the report this way, or we can print it, file, print, as a PDF. And the advantage of doing that is that I can print this one document, or we can print the entire workbook. And when we do it, it'll print it as a PDF. If we use this PDF writer, have one document, which will have the 4 different reports in it. Now it's also important to note and make sure that this last report all fits on one page. It wouldn't make any sense if it was too wide. So just be careful there. If this was a really wide report, now this is on a different page. If I go back to File and Print, then that last report looks kind of ugly. We've got it on this page, and then we're at that last piece of information is over here. So that's one of the things you don't want to really export a PDF file and have that be the case. You'd rather format it a little bit better. So to do that, I'm going to make this a little smaller. So you can format that in Excel as well, or you can format those type of issues within QuickBooks before. So I'm going to close that out, save it, or yes. Now the other option you can do is, of course, print it as a PDF, file, save as a PDF, or print it as a PDF, print, report. Using the Qt PDF printer again, this being a very good option. You can download the Qt PDF printer, it's free, and then print this, and it'll basically save it as a PDF. So it's just kind of a workaround if you can't save it as a PDF in another way. And again, I'm going to call it employees. It's going to the correct folder right now, so that's good. Note again, if I was to give this information to someone in this format, I'd have to attach 3 files to a Excel sheet, and this being the 4th now, and that can get a lot of data. We could zip the file, and so it's one zipped file that they would have to unzip and then open, or we can do it as we did with an Excel and give them the Excel sheet, or give them a printout from Excel which has these four reports on it with one PDF form, which is probably the nicest way if someone doesn't know Excel to see the information. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So again, just knowing how to sort that information, how to sort the reports, how to sort the data files, and how to present that information is useful. Note also that these reports could run over one page. So if you might have to go in here and say get rid of this column altogether, or make the screens a little bit smaller so it all fits on one page. It should fit on one page wide. If reports are too long, that's okay, but it should fit on one page wide if possible. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.